Like if you dig down out of any conspiracy theory, you're going to end up at Christ at the cross.
Fiction, it's one of the greatest or most powerful ways to get past the guard dogs of our heart, to allow truth to sink in.
God made sex. It's good.
Right.
Yes, things got twisted along the way, and the main symbols of our faith is an intoxicant. It's wine. You come across a relationship that is stable, they'll actually seek to sabotage it. They become husks of people and outsource more and more of what it is to be human.
If grace was a persona, like its version of domination would be full submission. And that full submission, that dominating through submitting, is exactly what Christ did on the cross.
Yeah, my name's Evan Page. I'm a professor at a small, soon-to-be university in North Georgia. And I mean, husband to a loving wife. I got 3 kids, 12, 11, and 6, almost 7 there. Gosh, our middle one, our oldest son, is adopted. It was a special needs adoption. He had some heart issues at birth, and yeah, spent most of my life in Colorado, and God recently, 4 years ago, moved us out to Georgia, which is where my wife is originally from. So that was kind of nice. There's a lot of in-laws around here. So yeah, that's the personal side. On the professional side, I did my undergrad work at Colorado Mesa University in Grand Junction, Colorado, as a psychology major, sociology minor. And then I worked at a residential center, working with troubled youth that their lives were difficult enough that they couldn't live at home anymore. So they came to live at this center, and I was kind of one of the mentors. I wasn't officially a therapist then. But that really kind of cemented my desire to go into therapy. So I ended up going to grad school at Denver Seminary, where I got my counseling degree. And then, gosh, I graduated, and as everyone likes to do at graduation, I started looking for jobs, and I got a call out of the blue, sitting at Starbucks one day, and I said, "Hey, this is the CEO at this other residential center. Do you want a job?" I said, "Yes, I do." But it was out in Missouri, and so took that, and it was really great experience. I was there for about 3 years. And our specialty
CEO.
What's that?
The CEO reached out to you?
Yeah. It was kind of funny. It was kind of this interesting grapevine kind of connection that he knew the director of the residential center I had worked at previously, like volunteered at. I wasn't really working. And he said, "Oh yeah, you should, track down Evan. He just recently graduated." And so yeah, I flew out there and interviewed, and I told myself, man, this better be amazing for me to leave Colorado and go to the middle of Missouri. And it was really cool. That I really liked their approach to therapy. Our specialization was reactive attachment disorder. So almost all of the adolescents we worked at there had been adopted from overseas orphanages. So a lot of early childhood abuse and neglect stuff to work through. And we had canine therapy there as well. So we had 20 something golden retrievers just on the property, and that was pretty special. So kind of got burnt out there. The shelf life of a therapist is about 2 years in residential centers, just because I mean things are just so intense, and just a heavy caseload and a lot of trauma to work through. And my wife ended up working there as well. She became my wife while we were working there, and we realized, man, all we talk about is this job. And that's not healthy.
Hmm.
Um, so we gave some notice, and we took off, moving back to Colorado with no jobs. Just like we just need to leave, and started landscaping for like a year. Worked with a landscaping company, and it was really good because there was no paperwork and no trauma, and just my hands got dirty every day, and I was just listening to good podcasts every day. uh, and eventually I was like, okay, at this point we're pregnant, and I need to kind of go back to the professional world that I studied for, back into therapy. So I worked at a big mental health center, like 500 employees, and I served kind of as the liaison between us and all the schools in the school district. So at the time that I got hired, we had contracted 3 therapists into 3 different schools, and then by the time I left, I think we had a therapist for every school in the school district. I think we had 32 um, schools that we were plugged in with, which was great because our goal was like, hey, bring therapy to the people who need it, remove as many barriers as possible. Um, so that was great. And then I was there for about 7 years, doing that, and did some public trainings too. This program called Mental Health First Aid, training people. It's like normal first aid, but for mental health. What do you do if you come across somebody who's really struggling? So training kind of the general population of how to deal with stuff like that. Um, and then from there, um, I took a position of clinical director for a group that was looking to start a residential center for kids rescued out of sex trafficking. Um, and kind of became a passion of mine during that season, and it was really great. The director CEO, she came to me and she said, essentially, if you could build a program, money is not an object. What would you do? Um, and so that's what I did. And we got as far as buying a big piece of property. I think we had 40 acres, a couple of buildings we were going to renovate into residential centers and build a school and everything. And I think it was December 15th, we got a call like, hey, funding got pulled. Nobody has a job.
Awesome.
Um, so
Gee.
was the big disappointment, which just a big heartbreak. Pouring a year of my life into this program to help these kids. Um,
What year was that?
that was I think it was December of 2020, maybe 21.
Yeah.
Um, so was out of work for a few months and just really praying into it. And um, again, through a series of connections, found out that this little college in North Georgia was looking for a professor. And coincidentally, a couple of my professors from grad school were now professors at this college. And I said, okay, must have some legitimacy to it. So I looked into it, and I'm like, oh, I'll throw my hat in the ring. And it was really funny in the interview process. They're like, oh gosh, how long have you wanted to be in education? I'm like, about 2 weeks, ever since I saw that there was a job posting. It was not goal. It was not on my radar, but God just kind of dropped it in my lap. And I told them, I said, yeah, if you're looking for somebody who like knows education really well, I'm not your guy. But if you want someone with a lot of like life experience in the field in like all these different areas, and I can communicate that, then
Mhm.
great, let's do this. And they liked that enough that they took me on, and we load up our car and dog and cat and three kids and a camper and dragged it all out to Georgia. I've been here for 4 years, and I love it. It's great. Yeah.
So
So yeah.
what's the day to day look like for you?
Um, yeah, the we do like 4 or 5 classes per semester. So I'll teach a couple classes per day and then have some office hours in there, which are just, open door policy, like come in, let's talk. Let's
Mhm.
and I really encourage students to take advantage of that because I tell them if you don't come talk to me, it's just me sitting in my office doing paperwork. And I don't like that. So come bother me, please.
Right.
Uh, but I said, yeah, come talk to me about psychology. Come talk to me about theology, because it's a Christian environment there. Um, or just come by if you're having a crappy semester. Yeah, I am still a therapist. Like I got tissues in my office, and so I'll have students take me up on all three of those, and it's led to some really great relationships and kind of mentor type relationships. Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah, day to day is doing that, grading stuff, prepping for classes, a few meetings thrown in there. Um, but yeah, it's not a ton of pressure. There's not a big emphasis on research. It's more focused on connecting with the students. They're really small classes. My biggest class is 30 people, and that's big for the college. That's my general psychology class. But then I've had classes with like 5, and it's just these really intimate, like close little discussions that we get to have about wide variety of topics.
What what is like your favorite? So I'm is it let me clarify, do you have multiple different kinds of classes that you teach on? Or is it just like this one thing, general psychology or psychology? And then my second question there is like, what's your favorite kind of batch size? Because I'm sure 30 has a dramatic difference in conversation level than 5.
Yeah, like what's the sweet spot? Uh,
Yeah, right.
yeah, I teach a bunch of different classes. I've recently become like the general psychology guy, so I'm the one that does general psychology, and those are the biggest classes because just everybody has to take those. And there is a different dynamic because they're big and because it's like 100 level class, so it's like all freshmen, like new to college. So just different dynamic there. But like this semester, I'm also teaching crisis and trauma therapy. So how to work through like in the moment something bad happened and we're on the scene. And okay, something bad happened, weeks, months, years ago. How do we kind of unpack that and heal from that stuff? And I'm also teaching counseling and ministry, which is one of our desire is that it's kind of a crossover because we do some a lot of Bible and theology ministry classes. So we're kind of getting people prepared for ministry in some of the majors, and the desire is they'll take the counseling and ministry class because gosh, wouldn't it be great for our future pastors to have some like counseling type understanding, just a kind of
Right.
foundational type class. Um, I do a child and adolescent therapy class because that's just what my experience happened to be. I didn't try and get into child in therapy, but just coming out of grad school, those are all the jobs that I had, which was just kind of interesting, that trajectory in my career. Um, I do a counseling skills class, and that's where we're working on more like actual skills. What do you do? How do you navigate a conversation? How do you guide it? How do you
Right.
connect with people like in the therapy room? Um, I do a human sexuality class, which I was most hesitant to take that one on because I'm like, oh, that's kind of like taboo and oh, that's going to be uncomfortable to talk about. Um, but it's actually one of my favorite classes now because it's a little uncomfortable to talk about. And so it's just kind
Mhm.
of fun unpacking everything that's involved in there and talking about, gosh, what was the original design? Like God made sex. It's good.
Right.
Yes, things got twisted along the way in some aspects of it. But how do we help people in those areas? I teach a social psychology class. And then my smallest class typically is psychology of religion. So that's anywhere from like 5 to 8, maybe 10 people in that one. And that one's really different. You're talking about the different dynamics. That's a real discussion based class. Like we go through a book and students like take a chapter and kind of present it to the class, and then it's like a discussion around that
Mhm.
because the book is just very dense, and so we just like take it in little chunks and we
No.
discuss it.
Yeah, of course.
And then I break that up with some lectures and kind of every other where we talk more about um, like the experience of psychology of religion. Um, you could call it the more spiritual side versus the more religious side. Um, so yeah, we explore all different topics in there too.
Yeah,
Um,
if you were
that's
to
fun.
like narrow it down to like the sub like the class, the subject that you're talking about and the class size, what would be like your perfect day of teaching?
Yeah, I think I'd do a combo of like one big like general psychology class and then like a more specialized higher level like 300, 400 level class. Because they're just fulfilling in different ways. So I kind of fill my cup in different
Yeah.
ways. Like the general psychology, it's like getting people excited about a subject they may have never heard about before, um, and sneakily trying to recruit people into the major. And that's kind of fun. Like just exposing them to this crazy world like maybe you knew nothing about.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Um, but I also do like getting really deep in those upper classes of like let's really talk about like what this means and really pull this apart and and have these more like intimate conversations one on one.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
What
So
would be the class size for both of those?
the ideal class size.
Yeah.
I found out 30 is too big. I did 30 this
Mm.
semester and they just got a little squirrely. Uh, so
Mhm.
probably, I mean, I'd like around 20 for a general psych class. Um, but like for one of those discussion classes, 5 is a little light. Just because you need more minds to come together to like bounce everything off of really
Mm.
well. So probably around 8 would be a size for that. And that's kind of how you run like a therapy group anyway. You want around 8.
I could ask you a ton more questions.
They're great.
Because you know, coming at you like completely like new friend, you know, I have
Yeah.
plenty of questions I could open it up with, but I'm sure Jeremy also has some things on his mind. I'll pause briefly,
Okay.
just briefly, so you better take your opportunity.
Yeah, so I have one or two questions that have popped up, that are outside of the list of topics that you suggested,
Nice.
and one of them is to start with. You've had several different types of therapy experiences and environments.
Yeah.
from very intense things to more. I'm assuming that the camp, the campground that you were the CEO of, um, that was only in the planning stages. Am I correct? Am I
Yeah,
remember?
so that was a residential center. Yeah, I was the clinical director.
Okay, yeah, but
I
it
was
was
like in charge of all the therapy stuff that would
okay.
have been.
That would have, so it was only
Yeah.
in the planning stages. Okay. And then
Yeah.
so but you did have, the reactive attachment disorder, which we could talk about very
Yeah.
briefly. But bring that into the answer for this question is like going from one environment to another, let's just say to the general, 30 student class in general psych.
Mhm.
What sort of skills have you acquired that are informing your process and your method in both arenas, if that makes sense? Like what have you found helpful in the intense environment um, to use in the more general and I don't want to use the word vanilla, but basic, setting?
Yeah. Vanilla's okay. But this is my current job is much less stress
Mhm.
than something as intense as what we were talking about earlier. Yeah. Um, and I think that the experience in those more demanding or high stress or at least like more intense sort of jobs really helps me just navigate little things that might pop up. Like, gosh, I mean, in like a hard day in residential would be, I'd have to put, a student like in a physical hold, like to stop them from like attacking another student or me or something. Like that was kind of the
Mhm.
level. Or, I'm needing to work with the hospital because there's some significant, suicidal ideation going on, and we have to send this kiddo to the hospital because he's even beyond our level of care, which is pretty intense. Um, and so, yeah, going from that and kind of this trial by fire, and then coming into an educational setting where, gosh, the difficult days are not that difficult. Uh,
Mhm.
and it was funny. It came up in my interview. Um, part of the interview process is you have to teach a class because they want to see like, are you legitimate? Like, can you interact with some students? And I did it virtually because I was in Colorado. And on their end, they were just having a heck of a time with the technology and, getting Zoom or whatever they were using set up. And, eventually they landed on I wouldn't be able to see the classroom, but they'd be able to have me on the screen so everybody could see me.
Wow.
And they were freaking out on their end because they're like, oh my gosh, this is this guy's first impression of the college. But for me, I was like, this is fine. Like, we're just gonna roll with it. And I wasn't
Right.
flustered at all. And it's funny because it came up, later after I was hired. They were like, that was so impressive. We loved that you weren't flustered. And that was one of the things we really liked about you. So being able to handle actual crisis moments helps with the day-to-day stuff that
Day-to-day stuff. And
shouldn't fluster you too much.
I imagine, and we can talk just very briefly about reactive attachment disorder, which,
Yeah.
a person that you're describing yourself in that interview process, where you have a situation that you could actually have a reaction in that situation, you're very stable. Are
Mhm.
those two areas related? Is that a skill during that interview that you had put into practice, in the environment of patients and clients that are dealing with reactive attachment disorder?
Yeah, in terms of like being that stable base for somebody who's only experienced unstable relationships, if that's
Mhm.
what you're getting at,
Yeah,
yeah.
right, right.
Uh, that one of the big problems, and you know this, but just for everybody listening, one of the problems with reactive attachment disorder is a kiddo is brought into a situation very early in life, maybe from birth, where they don't establish strong bonds with their parental figures or caregivers. So that could be, somebody who was, like put up for adoption at a very young age. They're raised in an orphanage. Their basic needs and are not attended to, as well as somebody who was raised in a home. Or someone is put in a foster system, and they bounce around from home to home, and they start kind of learning this pattern of, gosh, I get close to somebody and then I leave, or they leave me, and I get sent to somebody else, and I get close to them and then they leave, and I get close to them and then they leave. So it's very unstable in relationships. And we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty detail of it, but this starts to become a pattern that becomes normal for them. And as humans, we like normal, we like predictability. And so when they come across a relationship that is stable, excuse me, that is stable, they'll actually seek to sabotage it. Because in their head, they're telling themselves this relationship is going to end eventually, because all relationships end eventually, in my experience. And so I don't have any control over that, but I have some control over how and when it ends. So I'm going to purposely sabotage this relationship. Um, so that makes for a
Control the
very
controllables.
difficult. What's that, Stephen?
You control the controllables, essentially.
Yeah. And so that makes for a very different, difficult client-therapist relationship, especially for us, where we used a very relational approach, that we saw relationship as the agent of change, that they would experience stability and connection and like real, genuine, unconditional, positive regard in this relationship. And that would begin to kind of grow this seed inside of them that, oh, I am worthwhile. I am lovable. I am cared for. So it was a very Christian approach for a secular approach. If you want to view it from that lens, which is one of the things I liked about it.
When you're dealing with these kids that like are just going through hell and back in front of you, right? That are just mental breakdown, this, that, the other, whatever it is. So you experienced that kind of drop off about 2 years in, I think you said it was, for the normal, in that kind of home situation.
Yeah. It's kind of the burnout is around 2 years for a typical therapist, and there.
Right. All right. And so like I'm wondering, that's playing a great psychological role on you. How do you end up, what is the lens through which you come to view yourself in relationship to those who are just breaking down all around you constantly?
Yeah, help me out with what you're looking for.
So like, when you look at mission trips, you have the whole the what is it, white savior complex or whatever it is,
Okay.
of like, oh, I'm helping, I'm this, I'm that, but like obviously coming in through your role, that's not at all the position, at least it shouldn't be. But like that's not normally the position I would take. It is like, hey, I'm actually trying to help someone who's broken find healing. And so,
Yeah.
but like, you're a year and a half in, and just nothing but crap has happened. And nothing but like literal fires and literal saving lives and whatnot.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, like, yes, that's draining and taxing on your mental state, but also like I'm sure like there's some sort of like what is the introspection like of who you are as a person of influence in their life? Like how do you, is there
Mhm.
some sort of pedestal that starts happening, or is there some sort of like, oh crap, I'm just like, being used by this organization to fix all their, I don't know.
As they
Yeah.
as they say in the medical field, physician, heal thyself. Perhaps field of therapy, you might say something like, therapist, therapeutize yourself? I don't know.
Therapeutize yourself. Yeah, psychoanalyze yourself.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was difficult because um, it it was I think more personal than like traditional just like outpatient therapy because I'm just with these same I had a caseload of like 10 or 12 students at a time. So I'm seeing them multiple times a week and so there's just more engagement and more intimacy in the relationship and it's you get personally invested. Um, and I don't know if that's healthy or unhealthy. I think I found a decent balance of, I want to have enough empathy and care for my clients. And gosh, my heart hurts when they hurt. And when I leave for the night, I have to do my best to leave it there. Just like for my own sanity and my own self-care. And so yeah, it wasn't, all fires. There were certainly the highlights and you did see growth in students. Um, but I think the main issue was um, not being able to disconnect from it. That we were just kind of on call 24/7. So, we'd always have our work phone on us. So even on the weekend, I'm out for a hike with, my girlfriend at the time, soon to be wife. And, we would not be thinking about work. We're on a picnic or something. And my phone rings and like all of a sudden I'm back at work. And there's always that like, you're kind of on edge, like the phone could ring. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, so that was difficult, and one of the things we kind of brought up to the leadership there of like, we got to come up with a system of like, when you're off, or like somebody else covers your clients, or you know, once a week or something. Um, but yeah, there was some personal investment, and yeah, just self care and a little bit of healthy separation that needed to take place. Yeah,
Boundaries there. Yeah.
yeah,
How is it when and I'm gonna ask this and I'll let you morph into whichever way you want to, as far as topics and stuff like that, because I know there's plenty of things that we'd like to cover. There's plenty of things that I'd like to cover, but
yeah. That'll be
I'm
part two.
curious. Yeah, right. I I want to understand. So with the background that you have and the present, job that you have and all this, you're also a dad, and that is the biggest job that you have.
Yeah.
And so it and that classroom never really stopped, So how is it that you like what is your, I don't know, philosophy going into being a dad? I'll let you take that wherever you want,
Yeah.
but I'd like to hear your take on that.
That's such a big question. What is your philosophy on being a
And
dad?
and what would you say to someone who, what would you say to a young man who wants to have a family and be a dad himself?
Wow, great question. Um, it's great. I mean, I love my kids. It's cool seeing little mini me's running around. Especially our youngest. Like he looks just like me. I mean, Jeremy, you've met Gideon. I mean, he's spitting image. And so it's cool to be able to um, love them and give them even more investment and even like a better connection with their parents and a better childhood and a better experience than you had, kind of like passing this along to the next generation. Gosh, what would I have done differently had I been in charge of me as a kid? Um, and that's one of the reasons I really like the job that I currently have because my kids are little and I get summers off. I spend all summer with my kids. And then I have a longer Christmas break than they do. And so we just get to spend a lot of time together.
Mm.
And my wife and I have found like a really good balance of um, kind of trading off. And she works in the evenings sometimes, and I'm with the kids, and she you know shops and picks out what meal that she thinks we should have, and I come home and I cook it, and we have like a really good system going. Um, I don't know if that gets to your question on my philosophy as a father.
It's a big question. I wanted to leave it open-ended. Because like some of the things that I consider is like how, and this is further towards the questions that are on the, that we talked about previously. Like, how is it that the message coming from Christians today affects childhood? Or things like how does, the disciplinary actions of a father affect how the child sees the father, how the child
Okay.
sees
Yeah.
God. It like there's so many different
Yeah.
ways that you could take that, or like how much free time versus how much is like, hey, the my world doesn't revolve around you, my man. Like I love
Yeah.
you, but like I can't just spend everything on you. Like all these different things you could, I'm just like these are things that I consider how would a very good parent do so in such a finite situation as this life?
Yeah. And that, yeah, you touched on something interesting of like how our relationship with our earthly fathers kind of affects our perception of our heavenly father. And we have that conversation, several times a year with our kids of, because we're, certainly not perfect, and, get frustrated, um, and it always ends up in this place of like talking to our kids and like, hey, you know, mom and I, we're not perfect. We're doing our best. We love you. And by the way, God is a much better father than I will ever be. And like just being like really upfront about that of
Mm,
like, um, yeah, I am not your heavenly father. I certainly try my best, and I'm gonna fail. And I'm gonna say sorry when I do. Um, and ask for your forgiveness, to model that for them. And by the way, anything you're picking up that is not good, that is just kind of leeching off of me onto you, please disregard that and don't apply that to the father. So yeah, we've had that conversation a few times.
mm. Yeah, I know one of the questions that was mentioned that we could bring into is like, I think Jeremy, you mentioned this earlier, was it how did that question go? I'll let you ask that question. Open it up.
I'm not quite sure which question you're referring
The
to.
the question of unhealth, is it unhealthy? Is this or that unhealthy?
Well, yeah, I mean, so George MacDonald, who was one of the first um, persons to be known as a Christian fictional writer, and was a mentor to C.S. Lewis, although I'm not quite sure the two ever met. C.S. Lewis said that George MacDonald was the most Christ-like person that he knew. George MacDonald grew up in Scotland in a very strict Calvinist environment, and he heard very hellfire Calvinist type of sermons when he was a child. But his own experience of his own father was completely opposite. His father was good-natured, kind, generous, and part of the development that McDonald experienced was seeing the dichotomy between the two. And he, in that way, he went against the pattern of people patterning their opinion of the Heavenly Father on their earthly father. And he said, well, how can this God that's preached in church can be this awful deity?
Like worse than my earthly dad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When my own father is so much more loving. So that was a huge thing, and that relates to attachment theory as well. He had this very strong attachment to his dad, and he had seen some of the detrimental effects from his preaching. So that's really important. I would say as well in this whole thing is in relationships. It's not just the the ruptures that happen in relationship, and certainly every one of us have experience in our own relationship with our parents ruptures.
Yeah.
More important is the repair that happens. And I would say, as a father or as a friend or as a mentor, being able to have the maturity to initiate the repair is the most important thing. And if you're saying to your children, Evan, that the Father, Heavenly Father, is much better than I am, you're admitting your own perspective and your own need for that relationship with the Father and your own ability to approach the Father, but also the Father's generosity to receive you, that repair. Um, so that's how I would address the mental health issue that we were discussing before we started recording. But I want to go in a different direction, if I may. And you also, Evan, you teach psychology of religion, and you had talked about drug use in religions. And
Right.
I know drug use
Ruby, dude.
something that's becoming very well known within therapeutic situations such as psychedelics, this sort
Yeah.
of thing, and the the ethical implications of that, the legality and whatnot. Can you talk to us as your students in this psychology of religion class? What is psychology of religion, and how do topics such as drug use in religions, and also you had also listed conspiracy theories, the seeing the unseen in the seen world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Steve's getting into it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, let's start with drugs, and then we'll get into some conspiracy theories. How about
right,
that? Seems
right
like a
on.
Um, yeah, yeah. So psychology of religion, yeah, the way I approach it, in at least in the book we use, very heady, very academic, looking at it as kind of what is the reason that humans have religion. Uh, is it something that is just innate within us? Is it something that we created? Is it like this little kind of antenna that connects to something that is actually out there? Um, and so kind of exploring it from more of a secular side, that the author takes, of him kind of being on the outside looking in, and this is kind of what he sees. And then us from the inside looking out, inside of the Christian religion, kind of how we understand and explain what he sees, and it's all pretty interesting. But one of the lectures that we do is about drugs, and talking about just different religious approaches and different drugs that different religions seem to kind of be built around, or at least utilize to connect to something other out there. Um, so and you also mentioned, I mean, we kind of touched briefly on like the therapeutic side of things. We don't get into it real deep in the psych of religion class. Um, but the use of yeah, psychedelics, like psilocybin therapy is kind of like this up and coming thing. um, I could see it being like becoming a therapy in the next several years. MDMA therapy is being used for like PTSD treatment, uh, which, okay, if it works, great. Um, but then we also talk about One of the more extreme ones we talk about is like ayahuasca, and I don't know if you listen to Joe Rogan or anything. He's talked a bunch about it, and some of the experiences that people have had on that of like encountering other beings, like, oh, what's that about? Or people encountering the same beings at different times, or seeing the same thing if they're both taking the drug at the same time. Like, do you see that? Yeah, I actually see that. I'm like, oh, that's weird that two people would see the same thing or encounter the same beings. So we do talk a bit about that and what that means. Like, gosh, are you actually like tapping into something there? Um, or are you just, high and you're just hallucinating something?
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of interesting. And then it kind of leads into this nice little discussion about Christianity, because one of the main symbols of our faith is an intoxicant. It's wine. Um, and gosh, what does that mean? I mean, Jesus's first miracle was, he was at this wedding. They run out of alcohol, and he
Make more.
miraculously creates a ton of alcohol, like several hundred bottles worth of wine to to a party that's already been going so long that they've run out. And it's the good stuff.
That's my savior right there.
Yeah. And like what are we supposed to do with that? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Like and it holds a special significance because it's like his first public miracle. It's like this is what you're putting out there as like a mission statement sort of thing. It's kind of a big deal. I mean, from my perspective, it's like, hey, I have come to take the ordinary, these water and stone jars, and make it extraordinary, something you've never even had before. That's even way better than what you can do yourself. Um, and it's flowing freely. There is plenty to go around. Um, yeah, so I don't know if that gets it at your question or not. I kind of lost myself in talking about it.
So,
The drug piece, at least.
Well,
yeah,
yeah, at least the drug piece, yeah.
yeah. So there's this Bible verse in the New American Standard. I just pulled that out randomly. Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 4. The New American Standard Bible says, "He has brought me into his banquet hall, and his banner over me is love." However, um, the another version of that is the literal standard version, for example, says, "He has brought me into a house of wine, and his banner over me is love." Young's literal translation says, "He hath brought me into unto a house of wine, and his banner over me is love." And so it's not just the best wine. It's actually a wine that would have had aphrodisiacs in it, and
Hmm.
there is this feeling of community. It's a house of wine, not just a banqueting hall, but there's a feeling of community and belonging and acceptance, this sort of
Hmm.
thing. And from what I understand, I'm not very researched in the area of psychedelics and how acceptable it is in different religious communities and different medical practices. That's actually a conversation that we can have with an endocrinologist that we're carrying on at the moment. What is the acceptability in these two environments? But one of the things, and I've known people that have at least expressed a desire to do psychedelics. And my first thought was, number one, how much is too much? And number two, are you doing this with someone who's trustworthy and trained? Um,
Hmm.
and so, because when there's mental stuff that's going on, and you're taking something that is going to make you literally more open and more flexible, that will
Yeah,
bring
more
down
vulnerable, open.
more
Yeah.
vulnerable. Exactly, bring down inhibitions, which some people need. Some people need the rigidity to be reduced so they can
Yep.
actually receive therapy and receive help. But how do you determine, who's trustworthy to do that with you as a professional?
Mhm.
These are questions I don't have.
That's a great question. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I I've been reading this book called Psycho-Cybernetics, and I don't know if you've been able to pick it up, Jeremy, if you've read anything of it yet.
yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Um,
don't ever try to hypnotize me. It won't work because I don't trust
yeah,
you.
there you go. So there's he knows where I'm going with this. There is this portion of the book that specifically talks to hey, there's a lot of interesting power he'll talk about with case studies and whatnot behind hypnotism. And he's like, it's such a taboo subject, and largely because we've seen it just done on stage in gimmicky kind of ways, but in kind of like therapeutic back office kind of settings, like it can have some real powerful changes. And he's talking about how hypnotism really, like, you can't be hypnotized until you have come to lay a groundwork of belief that what the hypnotist is saying is true. Once you believe that the words coming out of his mouth are true, then and only then can the following words be truth in your mind.
Once
So
I trust you, I'll allow you to lead me.
exactly. Exactly. And so he's talking about how in actual practice, a lot of quote unquote hypnotism is more of actually a de-hypnotism from your own beliefs, from your own
Mm.
hypnotic state of I believe this is me. I believe this is what I am capable of, what I'm not capable of, who I'm loved by, who I'm not loved by, things like that. So these practices are coming in of like I need like breaking down those guardrails. And I think it was C.S. Lewis or uh, perhaps it was somebody else that mentioned that fiction is one of it's one of the greatest or most powerful ways to get past the guard dogs of our heart, to allow truth to sink in, and I see these two things of kind of this hypnotism thing that I'm kind of learning a little bit of in this book, and then also just fiction writing in general, like those along
Yeah.
with psychedelics and intoxicants are all way different ways kind of to break down the barriers to allow the soft part to be exposed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really cool that especially that fiction piece. I'm just picturing Lord of the Rings of, um, just this world that Tolkien creates, and you just kind of allow yourself to like, yeah, get in the river and drift into that world. And then
Mm.
he kind of pokes in some like messianic stuff in there. And you're just like
Yeah.
you're just you're kind of more open to it because it's this fanciful world. Um and so we're just more accepting of it because we're like, hey, I
Mm.
trust you to take me on this story.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
So a parable by any other name
Yeah, there you
is
go.
what we're
Yeah.
talking about. Right.
Yeah.
Those truths enter into our experience. And the going back to the Psycho-Cybernetics book that Stephen is talking about, the idea in that portion was that we all have these truths that we hold to be true, these ideas and these concepts. And in the case of therapy through hypnotism, it would be helping to undo things that we hold to be true that are actually lies. So I'll never be a success. I'm ugly. I'm a disappointment. All these sorts of things. And so in that sense, you have to be dehypnotized to be set free from these lies that you've held as true. And that's
Yeah, because would you say it's the lie that is hypnotizing you?
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the whole book is about, and I'm not sure what decade the book is from. It's definitely not something current, but it's discussing the benefit, the very real benefit and success that comes from where you put your stock and what you believe, and how that affects the way you live and your future success, which kind of takes us into the next topic, which would be the fact that we all know that our nation's leaders are lizard people, and
Okay. Okay.
Of
Yeah.
course.
conspiracy theories, right? The
Okay.
Naturally.
unseen made seen.
Hypnotism. No.
Yeah. This is connecting to another question I wanted to ask you is you're dealing with freshman students who are coming and experiencing for the first time higher education, environments, atmosphere, and they come with certain beliefs, certain things that they hold true, and they are in a very natural point in their life where they begin to develop more autonomy and more independence and develop their value systems. How do you approach something like conspiracy theories and help them to be critical thinkers, to be wise and discerning in these sorts of things? But also,
Mm.
the other part of that question is, what do you see is most lacking and most needful for this current population in the college students of today?
So much in there, Jeremy.
I know, right? I don't ask simple questions.
only
They're,
only 5 questions that are
Okay.
equally as deep.
So what do I do with the freshman? We'll start there.
okay.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about that because we were talking about postmodernism a little bit in class today.
Mhm.
Because we were talking about gender dysphoria and kind of playing into this idea that, society's, well, it kind of peaked in 2023. We've kind of seen a downward trend. Um, but society kind of pushing this idea that, there is no real truth. Your truth is truth. Everybody has their own truth, sort of thing. Um, and so
Right.
part of the point of that discussion was, I have this book up there with me, the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5 TR is what we're on now. That has this, and just getting them to, yeah, as you say, like critically think of like, this is what this book says. What do we say? And really think through that. Like, yeah, there are experts out there and there are books written out there. And do we take people's word for it? Or do you like pump the brakes a little bit? Let's think about this. So yeah, getting them to think critically is so important. And I think I don't know if it's too early to dive into AI, but I think a lot of them is just kind of a trend I've seen over the last few years of kind of outsourcing that critical thinking to like ChatGPT.
Mhm.
Uh, and I'm not totally against the use. I'm kind of on the fence. Like if a professional wants to use it for like brainstorming or something, or like thinking through different angles, or what am I not seeing here? Let's kind of talk through this sort of thing, as opposed to, hey, write me a paper about this. And it's
Mhm.
like, ooh, that's definitely different. So I fall somewhere in the middle, and we have a whole AI committee at the college trying to figure out what do
Hmm.
we do with this cutting edge kind of stuff that none of us have ever seen before.
Is AI part of that committee? It
I
really
don't I don't know.
genuine question. You guys need that AI committee to have AI integrated in it.
There you go. Yeah.
Really, yeah. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So yeah, that's the critical thinking part. Because another thing I tell, especially my freshman class of, I mean, the reason you're going to college, whether you know it or not, is, to get this degree. And what this degree says is not that, oh, these are all the things you know, but it also says you were able to do something really hard for 4 years
Right.
and you stuck with it and you had deadlines that you met and you had, group projects you had to work on, and you're able to navigate those relationships, and you're able to put up with a boss that tells you to do things that you don't want to do. And so that degree says, yes, I've learned stuff, and yes, I'm going to be a good employee because I've proved it over these last 4 years. um, and so part of what college is helping you to like really think and grow like that brain muscle of like writing a paper is hard. It's really, I mean, you're writing your dissertation right now. It's difficult, and it's supposed to be difficult. But if you don't go through that hard process of writing and really, gosh, what do I actually want to communicate and how do I best do that? Then you're not going to be getting everything you can out of your experience in college. That part of it is like going to the gym for your brain every day.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think that gets to your question about critical thinking, hopefully.
Well, so when considering the idea of critical thinking,
Yeah.
like what what goes in from your perspective? I have my take on this, but what would you say is the essence of critical thinking, and how do people like start activating, like flexing that muscle more?
I think, and I'll tie this into the conspiracy thing. I think a big part of critical thinking is to be able to have a couple different ideas at the same time and be able to like go back and forth.
Mm,
Of like kind of take this perspective and, oh gosh, what do I think about it from here? And then what do I think about it from here?
mm,
Um, and in again, the psych of religion class, I have a whole day where we focus on um, conspiracies, 'cause I like conspiracies. They're fun. And
mm.
I like them, so we're going to talk about them in class, and because I'm in charge of the class. So what I do is, we kind of have a little chat about, what's your favorite conspiracy theory, and all that, and it's fun. But then we kind of explore that the psychology of conspiracy theories isn't that different from the psychology of religion. Because the psychology of conspiracy theories is something's going on here. I don't know if the thing you're telling me is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Um, and it's a fun little exercise I go through with the students. Um, but I something to the effect of, we're not sitting in this classroom right now. We're not we're not on this podcast right now. Like we are, but that's not like the only thing going on right now. Like
Right.
there's like spiritual stuff happening between the three of us in these three different locations. And I'm sure there's all sorts of interference that's trying to bust in. And the more you're able to kind of like peel that back and be like, oh, what's like actually going on here? Like, that's kind of crazy.
Mm,
And so we in the class we start to talk about like, ooh, what's that feeling that you get when you're like tapping into something that's like really true and like more true than like the world around us, that we're actually in a battle right now that is like of eternal significance instead of just like, I'm sitting here and,
Whatever, go
my
party.
house,
Yeah.
chatting with you guys. And when you start to peek in like that, you start to have this feeling like, oh my gosh, this significance and the weight of this moment. And the more and more that we can spend time in like that level, the more and more in touch with reality that we're going to be. And so we talk about how my favorite conspiracy theory is Christianity. That
Ah, there you go.
it is the ultimate. Like if you
Right.
dig down out of any conspiracy theory, you're going to end up at Christ at the cross.
Yep.
And
Yep.
like the real conspiracy is the, the the judge is in cahoots with the defense counsel, your defense counsel, and
It's in cahoots. It's also your defense counsel. It's the
yeah, yeah,
craziest thing.
yeah. And yeah, the ultimate conspiracy is, God's got this. And I love that.
It's also like at the same like the second greatest conspiracy theory is even just science. Science itself
Mm,
is you can label science as a big conspiracy theory. Like the idea of trying to learn more.
mm,
Well, is that process real or is it not real? Because it's never really provided the answer,
mm,
and it can't either. Just like all of your other, theories, like, does Bigfoot exist? Well, we can't prove it,
hmm
but like we believe it. Well, we can't prove that the underlyings of every bit of scientific research, but we believe it's true. There's
hmm
some sort of like yeah, anyway, continue. Sorry.
No, that's all I had for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I find that like a lot of critical thinking, at least being in a college town, having lived amongst college students,
Yeah.
and for the past 3 years, a really big I don't know, concern of mine, something that I just hone in on conversations with them. Like this is the only like we'll talk for 3 hours, and the only thing that I will pay attention to isn't even your reasoning. It's simply getting down to how do we actually define our terms. So we're using this word like the semantics, the devil's in the details. So like you're talking about God is, you know, say omnibenevolent. How can an all good, all powerful God let evil blah blah blah? It's okay. What the hell do you mean he's all good? What does that mean? Have you ever experienced that? Do you understand what that word means? So why
Mm,
are you using it and saying that he can't be good if you don't understand it? Like, let's break this down. Let's dig into what this word means, what that word means. Like for I was talking to this girl. It was granted it was late that night. It was the only time I've ever made a girl cry, and it broke my like it. I felt terrible about it, but like she came in. She was clearly tired, end of her day and whatnot, and we ended up having like a 2 hour long kitchen conversation, and she's sitting there trying to convince me that was it matriarchy, which is I think or no, it's whatever the opposite of uh,
patriarchy.
what's it when well yeah what's it when men oppress women?
The patriarchy.
Misogyny.
Or,
Well,
okay.
misogyny, yeah. So there's she misandry. That misandry when women oppress men could never happen. And I was like, okay, well, let's go into that, shall we? So we went into that a little bit. At one point, um, she had literally in one sentence, in just one sentence, she used the word institutional. It was institutionalized, institutional. She used it 3 times in one sentence, which I
That's not
found
bad.
very impressive that you could find that many ways to sneak it in there.
A lot
And I
of
was like,
felt.
you keep saying this word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Uh-huh.
And so I politely pulled open my dictionary and I read off, hey, like this is what institutional actually means. You're not using it in that way. And she broke down crying. She's like, you know what? I don't think that you're arguing in good faith. And I was like, I'm just trying to understand what you're talking about, man. Like what? And so anyway, I resolved the conflict by buying her a coupon to a coffee shop. But it was it was interesting because like here I am. I could be talking and arguing against her with all these historical facts and data about why misandry has existed. But what even is misandry? What even is institutional misogyny? What is institutional? Let's get down to these kind of singular words. And we realize like we're on totally different planes of understanding right now. We're arguing past each other.
Yeah, and I actually get into that exact topic in the counseling and ministry class of,
Mm,
when you are working with somebody, um, it, well, really with anybody, but especially around the topic of like religion, we do have to define our terms. Because when I'm talking with
mm,
somebody, I'm talking about, God the Father, I have, such a beautiful definition in my mind of God the Father.
mm,
And they might hear father and be like, oh gosh, I was abused by my father. That sounds horrible. God the Father, I don't want anything to do with him. Um, or even terms like, religion or spirituality or hell. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
yeah, right.
And and so part of kind of establishing the therapeutic relationship is like, let's find a language that we can use,
Mm,
like, and just having those really basic conversations of, yeah, when you say hell, what do you mean by
what do
that?
you
Because I want
mean?
to I want to use it in a way that you're going to understand, and so we can like actually communicate and actually do some work here instead of like talk far so good.
All right. So I think a couple of things that we have touched on already, we can kind of look at again is one of the points that you had brought up with critical thinking and AI is like how does this affect our humanity? So right now I'm in the mountains of North Carolina and I'm dog sitting for a family member who's traveling. And I'm tasked with taking care of these three young dogs. There's two of them are 6 months old, and the other one is three years old. And so dogs have this interesting ability to just they walk on the same path every day and they see something new all the time. They have to sniff all the sniffs and this sort of thing. And, maybe we forgot to get a ball or return a ball, that sort of thing. And so there's this need that they have for novelty and that goes beyond just mere repetition. So I think with creativity in AI, you were talking a minute ago about how, or it might have been Stephen was saying that AI can be useful for brainstorming, but not necessarily in the creative process. And I know in my own use of ChatGPT and other AI platforms, it's like I can ask it a question and refine that through my own questioning. But at the end of the day, it is I who has to decide how I'm going to use this information, what pieces fit together, this sort of thing. So there's this need still for not only critical thinking but creativity. How do
Hmm.
you see that fitting into what your students are producing and what you're asking of them? And in the 3 or 4 years now that you've been in the college setting, what sort of transformation have you seen in this whole area that may make us more human or less human?
Hmm.
Way of framing it.
Yeah.
Love that.
Um, I feel like I'm a little pessimistic on AI. That I feel like it's so easy to outsource. It's so easy. And it's really easy to take shortcuts. And gosh, if somebody has a paper due tomorrow, and gosh, I forgot about it. And it's 9 o'clock at night. I could spend the next 4 hours working on it, or I could spend the next 4 minutes working on it. I think there's a real temptation there to take that shortcut and um, lose a little bit of integrity and morality and and a bit of your humanness. And part of my concern is, and I'm not an AI expert, but part of my concern is that, if that happens too often and it becomes, the path that the dog walks down all the time, that
Mhm.
it just becomes such a part of our life that we just kind of become husks of people, um, and outsource more and more of what it is to be human, instead of living our life and taking the hard with the good.
It's almost as though we're expecting the AI platform to experience reality for us and give us a crunched, a reduced version. You had mentioned also just asking one of your students to just sit in nature for 5 minutes and
Oh
journal.
yeah.
And I know, I'm sitting here in the beautiful mountains, at the moment. I'm trying to work. I have a book of tables, a table of books here that I brought with me, that I've been able to look at while I'm here. And I've got beautiful scenery around me, but I've found like the walking with the dogs, spending time in nature, is so much more rewarding at the moment. And there's
Mhm.
there's physical benefits. There's the breathing and circulatory. There's the biological, um, um, what's the word? Advantageous aspects of that. Like, why is it that we are being shortchanged on being human and flexing our creative minds? Why is that, and what do you think it would be a good solution for that? Just
Oh
solve the whole
gosh.
problem. Just solve the whole problem. So that's all I
Solve
want.
the technology problem.
Right.
Yeah, because it's not just AI. I mean, it's we have these, you know little devices on us all the time that just feed us crack, and it's so addicting to people. But yeah, the example you used of, a student that, one of the assignments I gave was, you know it doesn't have to be go sit by the creek, but it would be nice if you went and sat by the creek, and we're going to write a reflection paper. Like, there's no research involved. Don't go to the library. Reflect on God and the problem of evil, and how you are going to reconcile those two things, because you're going to have clients that have that problem. Um, and the student came to me and they're like, "Can I get an extension because I haven't had time to go sit by the creek because I have this going on and this and
Yeah.
this and this and this." I'm like, first of all, you have too much going on. Like, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think we seek to fill our time so much, um, with technology, and I mean, we have more opportunities to fill our life than ever before. Is that good? I don't know. I think maybe, going to a cabin in the mountains, where there's no cell service for a week might be the best thing you could do for yourself. Uh, um, yeah, yeah. I don't want us to lose our humanness.
Something you might have to sit on and think about for a little while.
Yeah, there you go. Put money where my mouth is.
All right, all right. Stephen, I can see the wheels turning.
I was gonna say the same thing. You're deep in thought, man.
Yeah.
I'm more deep in thought of like, how do I word it properly? See, so I don't know what the term is. There's bullish and bearish. I don't know what the
Bullish is
middle.
like feeling good about it.
Right. Bullish is feeling good about it. Bearish is feeling not good about it. I don't know what the middle category is of like indifference,
Okay.
right? Of like it, and it's not like a complete indifference. It's a mode that I take of AI of like it's a it's a form of technology. The
Hmm.
wheel was a form of technology. This play, that saddle makers, this literal saddle makers in America protested against the Ford Motor Company
Yeah.
because that cars shouldn't be legal because it was going to put them out of business, right? And that
Yeah.
hey, and what do you like? If you were that saddle maker, what argument would you come up to say that Ford Motor Company shouldn't exist? What would you? It's making us too fast. It's making us too individual. It's separating community. We don't have these deep bonds anymore. I'm telling you, the saddle was away, man. Like, so there's this situation where it's like humans are gonna do with technology what humans are gonna do.
Mhm.
So in reality, it's going, I think that it has the ability to ruin generations. Yes. I also think it has equal amount of capability to help build up new generations that are even healthier, longer living, and more knowledgeable. But also,
Yeah. Best case
there's
scenario.
this
Yeah.
right. I think both of those scenarios are equally as possible, the worst case scenario and the best case scenario. And the reason why is because, I was just talking to my sister about this a few days ago. That like yeah, on Monday I was talking to her about how I was like, Tiff, like AI, like here's the thing, right? Is that AI is not going to take everybody's job, okay? Because ultimately humans are sentimental creatures. When mom or dad or grandma, gets kicked out of their job because of AI, we're going to start choosing local. We're going to choose non-AI. We're going to choose slower because we're protecting what we find sentimental, And so not just that, but also a couple of other variations, a couple of other factors there. So I think both situations are equally possible, and I think it is more of a just simply another new technology that's going to propel us into a situation where we're going to have to come up with new guardrails, and I
Yeah. The
don't,
saddle makers need to start making car seats.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So like,
Yeah.
as an editor for this podcast, right, like AI is completely infused within my editor.
Oh yeah.
Now
Sure makes
I
it a lot
make
easier.
the right. Oh my gosh, a lot easier. So like it makes my job so much easier, but I personally take um a lot of pride in at least having come up with a really fantastic prompt sometimes. Something
Yeah.
that helps to create something that's really specific, really tailored to what I'm envisioning. So it's still my creation because
Hmm.
everything's created twice, right? The philosophy of this all. Everything's created twice. First up here and then out here, right? And so if everything's created twice, then how much are we outsourcing this first creation versus how much are we holding on to it? Because you can create it with internally, and I think that you're going to see a separation, a kind of divide between those who are willing to create internally before they allow AI to assist them in creating it externally, and those who outsource the internal creation first and just allow it to create both, and those are going to be repetitive, those are going to be uncreative, uninspired, and they're going to be boring, and we're going to see it. And that's why you see it in emails today. You see emails that are like, they have the little dash that ChatGPT puts in every paragraph, and it's like, what the heck? Dude, those are my thoughts
Yeah.
on it. But
I'm I'm going to push back a little bit since I'm a
do
little since I'm a little bearish. Um, I I like the idea of sentimentality holding us together, and in my little town of Georgia, our downtown is just dead. There are so
Mm.
many little mom and pop shops that are just not there. Walmart's doing great,
Mhm.
and nobody's rushing to reopen the mom and pops. But maybe it hasn't gotten bad enough, and maybe the sentimentality will kind of come back to that.
Mm.
Um, the other thing that I was thinking of when you were like, oh, it's like the wheel, it's like the car. Um, I think it has the potential to be like nothing else humanity has ever made, and even even creative jobs will be lost. And you've probably seen the Will Smith eating spaghetti.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
evolution
yeah,
of
the,
it.
the 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 evolution of like, man, 3 years ago we were all laughing
I
like he's
love
like
that video.
shoving it in his mouth, and now it's like, is that
You can't
I think
tell it.
that might actually be Will Smith eating spaghetti, and that's like over
Yep.
3 years, and I'm like, I
Yep.
think, is this the
Yeah.
beast? Like, what are we looking at here? What is humanity giving birth to if we actually have some general AI pop out of this? Um, and so I'm bullish, or excuse me, I'm bearish, and I hope you're right.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
I like the vision you paint of like, this is actually be really great. If this is like a tool that we can harness and use to like propel us into this like beautiful, you know, 1,000 year reign of the
It's
church,
not,
that would be great.
but it's not going to come without its pain. You know,
Mm.
there's going to be growing pain. There's going to be adjustment pain. And in reality, I was just watching a podcast on OpenClaw today, which is a kind of form of AI, and they were talking about how,
Oh, open claw.
like, yeah, OpenClaw, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah. It was Claude Bot and then turned into OpenClaw. But he was talking about how uh, this guy who's on the forefront of utilizing AI, he's created a business in the past month and a half. Like today is like month and a half marker. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, and in this past month and a half, he's generated over $100,000 in revenue
I
from
think,
a
yeah,
purely no human company,
yeah.
right? And he set up this bot and said, create as many agents as you need to. Here's as much autonomy as I can progressively safely give you, and
Hmm.
you create a business. I want so this guy, this individual who's on the podcast, he is on the frontier of AI, of what can it do, what's its limits, and he's like, I've been finding limits. Like it can't like there's certain amount of sales. It can't solve sales perfectly because you can't. There's only so much that you can sell before humans just stop buying,
Hmm.
right? There's only so many conversions that you can create, and
Hmm.
so just because it can be exponentially great in this area, well, we still are selling to who? Humans,
Yeah.
ultimately. Um, and so it's interesting because like I'm not it is going to hurt a lot of folks, and a lot of folks are scared of that. But at the same time, it's going to create a whole new segment of jobs that nobody ever thought of before. And like right now, going back to your mom and pop's shop perspective of like, they're just kind of out here waiting in the wind for somebody to decide to take a stroll nowadays, and
Boarded up.
and
Yeah.
um, I am right now. So Saturday, literally on Saturday, I was like, I'm gonna become an AI expert. I was like, I'm gonna just sit down and watch like 10 videos on AI and just start messing with it, right? So I did that, and I bought a Claude, which is an AI system, a Claude subscription, and I started tinkering with it. And I said, hey, help me with my email. In 2 hours, I went from 2,500 emails in my inbox to near net zero.
Mm.
I didn't do anything. I just put in the prompt and said, "Hey, I want this, right?
Yeah.
Um, be careful around this. Create folders for that, and I was like, holy crap, this is incredible. I was like, hey, everybody's talking about like starting businesses with you. Like, can you do that? And it's like, yeah. What do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. So we just kept going through this, this progressive train of it asking questions and me answering and me coming up with, oh, you know what? Like, I'm passionate about small businesses. I own a business and I want to create more. And so what I have now is called tradestack.biz, and it's a live website. It's a rough draft right now as we're, talking, but by the time this goes out, it'll be the finished product. And the idea behind it is utilizing AI to help the small business owner who got into small business thinking that they could just do the thing that they love, but now they're like trapped in like, oh crap,
Yeah.
entrepreneurship isn't just doing 100% the thing I love.
Yeah, I got to keep
And
looking.
so,
Yeah.
right, yeah, right. And I have to hire employees, and when gone are the days that I could just get the baked pies like everybody told me to start a business
Yeah.
around, right? And so, and contractors just kind of go out and start working and they never, set up a business plan. So the whole idea is to say, hey, entrepreneur who's so focused on not failing, that they also hear about AI and don't want to get left behind, but they have no time to learn about it, let alone integrate it. Here's this website that tailor fits AI around you so you can go learn where to pick up more money, like money that you're leaving on the table, and where to generate more money that you didn't think of before, and help strategically goal oriented to where it sends text messages to ping you to finish these goals. So it's like it is possible, I think. I'm working on it. And in which case, things like small businesses don't get ran out of town. And I think there's a lot of good-hearted people out there that might find ways that AI can help prevent AI from taking everybody else's jobs. you know, this is my thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm not totally for AI. Like I'm not like we have to do this, but like
Yeah.
I think it's got potential and but it has also got potential to ruin a lot of college students from like considering what the definition of a man or a woman is, at the same time.
Yeah. Good thoughts.
Sorry, I've been blabbering on for way too long. Jeremy, stop me.
Stephen, it's interesting. We need to have this Claude take a look at a website for Icons Regospeled, and there is one. I never told you this, but I actually did apply for a domain. So
Hey, there
we'll
you
talk.
go.
Well, and
Nice.
it's still active. It expires in May, so we need to take a look at that and work on getting Claude to get to work to us.
Easy.
Easy,
Easy.
nice.
It is actually easy. It's pretty crazy.
So we'll upload videos and logos and images and all this sort of thing. So that should be pretty fun. Um, Evan, if I understand your position, I think I kind of side with you a little bit, being more pessimistic about this and its effect on humanity. I'm wondering, at least in the psychological aspect, where we saw this massive explosion of dysphoria going on in the population that coincides with the cell phone use in 2010, and that's based on Jonathan Haidt's book, Anxious Generation, which is a really fantastic text. And
Phenomenal.
and the number of um, I don't know what the exact age group is. Let's just say teens to 20s. The number in that group that's identifying now as trans is declining. So I kind of see like we have this huge spike and then a recession of that. I'm wondering if AI will be something similar where it becomes so hot and it's the fad, but then it just kind of dies away as it becomes um, there is this dichotomy between, sorry to say this, Stephen, but young people who don't know how to think and
Yeah.
older people like myself who just really don't want anything to do with the technology and they don't have the time to, going back to something that Evan was talking about earlier. I don't have the time or the inclination to try and learn how to do all this stuff, desire. And, I'm sure that someone out there will say, well, I don't have the time nor the crayons to explain it to you, that sort of thing.
I love that. Just
Uh, I've got a Chuck Norris joke because you mentioned Bigfoot. I could share that as well, but I will, in honor of
in memory.
the passing of the great Chuck Norris. We definitely need to watch a couple movies that he did as well. So I'm just wondering if this whole AI thing is going to blow over as it is dependent upon whether humanity can actually use it in a healthy way and helpful way. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't know if we have time to get into any other deep mental health issues that we had thought about talking about. And
I
maybe
I
we
would
should.
love if I may, right quick. I have a question for him. I want to get this in before we wrap anything up.
Well,
I want to know.
by all means, you may ask him.
Yes, yeah, not you.
Right. Third person here. Yeah.
um, what is it that you're currently reading?
Well, that's going to open up a whole can of worms.
But it's
Yeah,
not deep philosophical mental health stuff, maybe. I don't know.
it's not. I just finished it, Jeremy. Grace Saves All. Um,
No.
so yeah, my wife has been trying to keep up with me reading it. Um, so yeah, about looking at the idea of Christian universalism, which I mean that'd be another half hour of us talking about it. But it's just kind of an interesting step in my kind of theological journey um, through my life and kind of coming to um, a greater understanding of the possibility of um, yeah, God actually kind of really actually just dominating um, in this big cosmic contest that we got going on. Is he just gonna dunk on Satan and really win? Several billion to zero. So yeah, that's what I just finished up reading. But yeah, I'm in the middle of the semester, so I don't have a lot of time for just fun reading, especially
Yeah,
reading college papers.
maybe we can come back in a couple months and have a part two, when you've
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah.
had a chance to process that text. Just for those who are listening, who've stayed with us this long, basically the idea is even in conversations right now in contemporary Christianity in the United States. For example, Kirk Cameron just recently shifted from the afterlife idea of eternal conscious torment. I use a different word than torment, but
Hell.
conscious torment. He shifted to annihilationism, and it's funny because John Stott was, I believe, he was a Reformed or Baptist person. I've read one of his books. He from the '80s. He shifted from eternal conscious torment to annihilationism, and that opened up a whole can of worms for Christians in the United States to say, you know what, maybe annihilation is actually it could be considered a legitimate belief in terms of like the afterlife. So Kirk Cameron is another example of that. And then with the different ideas of restoration that happens after you die, and the thing is, like, none of these are new ideas, and sometimes there's strongman arguments, sort of stereotypical ideas that are not exactly accurate. Where we like, well, what does the word universalism mean? What does annihilation mean? And what are we talking about when we're talking about eternal conscious torture? There's certainly
Yeah,
medieval.
it gets back to let's define the terms and use the same.
Exactly.
Devil's in the details.
The devil's in the details. So, I will just touch on this one thing, like does God dominate? And that's the word that you used. Something that I've discovered in the West, in Western Christianity and Western culture, is we have an affinity for power. And since you're in psychology, we can talk about men's issue with PMS, power, money, and sex. But we are drawn as a culture to power, and so we view God as very powerful and domineering and authoritarian in that way. And Brad Jersak pointed out in his book, A More Christ-Like God, which I read for the first time maybe 10 years ago now. He said, when someone views God as willful, it creates a willfulness in us. And that's basically a rebelliousness, a rebellious, aspect. So if I view God's disposition towards me as a domination in power terms, and that's going to create a reaction to me, as opposed to a position of power is actually love. So God
Yeah.
demonstrates
Yeah.
God.
And just to clarify, I wasn't using
Mhm.
dominate in like,
Yep.
yeah, crushing, but like,
Yeah.
imagining there's a
That
contest, he is going to win
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah.
Jeremy's clarification is more for the audience,
Okay.
not the
Right.
correct.
Yeah. No,
Just defend myself a little bit.
no,
Yeah,
no, no.
no, it's not you.
I was just addressing
It's them, the
person,
viewers. No, it's
not the person who was using them. But my position is like, if we have been created by our Creator, and the thing about this is, even in that text we cited earlier, Psycho-Cybernetics, it recognizes that, at least in the Reformed concept of Christianity, that God's purpose for creation is that we would glorify in Him. And
Mhm.
then in the um, what's the phrase? Um, Not humanitarian, but the thing that gets criticized so much is, um, that we would, as humans, that we would flourish. Humanism, sorry, I was so close. Humanism. So humanism has the goal that the human would flourish, and Christianity has this traditional idea that that God would get glory from us. So it's like, if we have been created by our designer to both flourish and give God glory, then his whole purpose in creation, in creating us, would be that we would be flourishing, that we would live the good life, and that we would reflect his glory to all creation. And for the vast majority of his creation to be annihilated or end up in some sort of horrific eternal condition that we can't even begin to describe, well, that's neither of those things. That doesn't reflect the love of a good creator who is all benevolent. So we have now crossed over into part two in our conversation, where we can talk about, okay, what is the mental health condition of a God that would be able to, through love, be winsome and be able to persuade, not to violate the free will of an individual, but to actually bring to flourish his creation to adequately reflect his love to all parts of creation. So that's another
I,
concept that we can.
I need to interject right quick. I'm not gonna make this long. All right. Um, Evan, if you're open to a book suggestion at some point when you pick up books again after the semester,
Right.
yeah. Um, it is the book by Rene Girard, I See Satan Fall Like Lightning. It is remarkable. And on this topic of, like, going back to how you said it earlier, you put, God dominating, and Jeremy is like clarifying what that means. And
Yeah.
in a sense, I think it's very accurate to say God has a dominating side. Dominating, though, in the sense of grace, which is the exact polar opposite of power. And because grace, great, like if grace was a persona, like it's version of domination would be full submission. And that full submission, that dominating through submitting, is exactly what Christ did on the cross.
Yeah.
And that full blown submission exposes the evil for what it is, which is exactly the idea behind Rene Girard's book, which is that what Jesus accomplished on the cross was exposing the scapegoat mechanism that was in society, that we needed to kill someone. We needed to put our sins and our frustration and our belief that we are not loved onto someone else in order to feel redeemed, to feel atoned for, to feel at one with. So it is a remarkable book. Dude, yeah. So I would highly suggest that's your next book to pick up once you're out of the semester. But any following thoughts from that, Evan? Any last words?
No, that's great. We'll have to do a little book study next time.
In Rene Girard's philosophical terms, that's scapegoating. In psychological terms, that's triangulation.